Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes, bonjour, and welcome to this first Commission for Environmental Cooperation webinar on nature-based solutions from theory to practice, reducing flood risk in coastal communities. A bit of housekeeping first. I want to invite my colleague Nicole Gogni to provide tips on the English, French, and Spanish interpretation service that are offered today as we have speakers and participants from Canada, Mexico, and the United States joining us, and some presentation taking place in Spanish and English today. Please, Nicole.
Hi, thank you, Catherine. Hi, everyone. Welcome. So we set up language interpretation for this meeting. In order to use it, you just need to click in the interpretation icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It looks like a glove. You will see a list of the languages that we are giving interpretation. You will see French, English, Spanish. Please pick the one that you want, and you will hear the interpreter translating for you. If you need help, let us know and we will sort it out together. Hola a todos. Tenemos activada interpretación de idiomas para esta
Hello, we
reunión.
have
Para poder
activated
usarla,
interpretation,
ya puede
simultaneous
hacer clic
interpretation.
en el icono de
To
interpretación que tienen en la parte
activate,
inferior
click
de
on the
Zoom.
globe
Aparece un
more
globo
or at the
terráqueo
bottom
y
of
verán
the
una
Zoom
lista
window.
de los
You
idiomas
will
que
see
estamos
a list of the
haciendo la
languages
traducción.
in which
Francés,
we are
inglés,
doing the
español.
interpretation.
Ustedes
English, Spanish,
eligen
and
el que
French. You
prefieran y
select the one
estarán
that you
escuchando
want
al intérprete
and you can
durante
hear the
ustedes. Y
interpreter
si necesitan ayuda
in your
para poder
language. And if you
activarlo,
need
nos lo
help
pueden hacernos
to
saber.
activate it, please
Muchas
let us
gracias.
know. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Nicole. Hi, everyone. My name is Catherine Boyd-Michaud, and I am a project lead at the Commission for Environmental Cooperation, where I work on the CC project, Nature-Based Solutions to Address Flooding in Coastal Cities. We would like to start by acknowledging that even though this is a virtual webinar, the CC Secretariat, and therefore myself, is located in Montreal, Canada, on the unceded traditional territory of Ganin-Gahaka First Nation, and that this is a place that has long served as a nexus of meeting and exchanges for many First Nations. We recognize and respect the Ganin-Gahaka as a custodian of the lands and waters where we live and work. And I just want to invite everyone to maybe take a moment and reflect about the land where they are joining us today. Thank you. So we are very excited to be hosting you today to share inspiring stories and tools being developed and used in North America to support the uptake of nature-based solutions. This webinar is part of a series of two webinars on the topic where speakers will share different aspects related to NBS implementation in coastal areas, as well as specific case studies. Today, you will be hearing from these three great speakers on how policy and science can support NBS, as well as case study from Atlantic Canada on a living shoreline project. So following their presentation, the presentation of the three speakers, there will be an opportunity to ask them a question during a Q&A. You can do so by clicking on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen. Before passing the relay to the speakers, just a few words on the CEC. So the CEC is an intergovernmental organization that was established 30 years ago by the governments of Canada, Mexico, and the United States to address environmental topics of mutual interest. Our mission is to facilitate cooperation and public participation for the conservation, protection, and enhancement of the North American environment. We do this through different projects and initiatives and with many people. We conduct research, provide tools and trainings, and really we provide a unique space for decision makers, practitioners, and the public to engage on environmental issues in North America. And so since 2021, we have been working on the project Nature-Based Solution to Address Flooding in Coastal Cities. So this is the project through which we are hosting this webinar series. And as part of this project, we have convened different actors from the three countries to lay the foundation of a community of practice. We have worked on addressing known barriers to the uptake of NBS by developing guiding documents for decision makers. And we have been supporting knowledge sharing through the panels and events and the organization of activities such as this webinar. We do this work with several people, and we thank them all for their participation and their feedback. We also want to thank our project steering committee, regrouping experts from the three governments. You have them listed here on the screen. And so one of our project output is the publication of a series of 4 guiding documents that you can see on the screen. The first two, the co-benefit report and the monitoring synthesis report, are already available on our website in English, French, and Spanish. The 2 other guides on retrofitting existing infrastructure and monitoring efficacy, proposed methodology, and indicators will be published in the coming weeks. So stay tuned. Now I will turn to our first speaker, Celia Piguron. She is the General Coordinator of Climate Change Adaptation and Ecology at the National Institute of Ecology and Climate Change in Mexico. Celia, the floor is yours.
Hola, buenas tardes.
Hello, good afternoon.
En un momento prendo mi cámara. Listo.
Okay, ready?
Escuchamos bien, ¿verdad?
We can hear, right?
Perfecto.
Okay,
Bueno, pues
perfect.
muchas gracias,
Okay, thank you
Catherine, y
very
a
much,
todos
Catherine,
nuestros colegas
and all of
de
our
la
colleagues
CCA por esta
from the
invitación.
CEC for this invitation.
Hemos preparado
We have
una
prepared
presentación que
a
esperemos
presentation
ponga
that we
al
hope
día lo
that
que estamos
updates you
haciendo desde el
on what we are
Instituto
doing
Nacional de
from
Ecología y
the
Cambio Climático en temas de
National
adaptación
Institute
y en
of
particular para
Climate
el
Change and
tema de
Ecology, specifically for the topic of
zonas costeras.
coastal
Entonces, si
zones.
pueden ayudarme
So if
a
you can
poner la
help me to
presentación,
put the
vamos
presentation,
avanzando.
we will advance.
En lo que ponemos la presentación, quiero
As we set up the
compartirles que
presentation, I can
estamos
share with you
iniciando una
that
nueva
we are starting
administración
a
en
new
México, como
administration in
seguramente
Mexico,
todos
as all of
saben,
you already know.
y es una
And
administración que
it's an
está
administration
retomando mucho
that
de lo
is
que
taking a
México
lot of what
avanzó durante
Mexico
muchas décadas en el tema de
advanced
cambio
in the
climático,
topic of climate change,
conservación, uso
conservation,
sustentable,
sustainable use.
y
And
acaba de haber unos cambios
we just
interesantes
had
dentro de la
interesting
Secretaría
changes
de Medio Ambiente.
within the Secretariat of the
Entonces,
Environment.
el INEC, el
So
Instituto
the
Nacional de
INEC, the
Ecología y Cambio
National
Climático,
Ecology of
está
Ecology and
siendo
Climate Change, is
reforzado, está
reporting,
siendo pues
is
actualizado, ¿no? Para que cumpla
updating
con
so
su
that it
función
meets its
en las
functions
condiciones y en el contexto
with regards
actual de
to the
México y
current context
del
of
mundo.
Mexico.
Entonces, mi
So
coordinación, la
my
Coordinación General de
coordination
Adaptación
for the
y
general
Ecología,
coordination of
pertenece al INEC
ecology
y el INEC
belongs to
está dentro
INEC,
de la
and
Secretaría de Medio
INEC
Ambiente
is within the Secretariat
y
of the
Recursos
Environment and
Naturales.
Natural
Y
Resources.
estamos en el equipo de la
We
maestra Alicia
are
Bárcena y del
under
doctor
the
José Luis
guidance of
Samaniego, que
Ms.
ahora es
Bárcena
el
and Dr. Samaniego,
subsecretario de
who
Desarrollo
is Assistant
Sustentable
Secretary of
y,
Sustainable Development and
Economía Circular. Y dentro de
Circular
esos temas
Economy.
están incluidos
And
los temas de
within
cambio
those
climático.
topics, we have climate
Entonces,
change.
desde el INEC, de
So
la
from
Coordinación de
INEC,
Adaptación
from
y
the
Ecología,
coordination of
estamos
ecology and
retomando
adaptation,
ser
we
el
are
brazo o el
being
instituto que
the
genera la
institute that
información, que
generates the
genera los
information,
sistemas, las
that
herramientas
generates
para que
the
puedan ser
tools
adoptadas en
so that
la
they can
política
be
pública,
adopted in the
en los instrumentos de política
public
pública. Entonces,
policy and the
hacia
tools
el
of public policy.
final de la
So
presentación
at the
haré
end of the
una
presentation,
pausa
I will make
para comentar en qué
I
momento
will stop
estamos
and
sobre
let you
esta
know
generación de
where
instrumentos de
we
política
are
pública,
in public
que es un momento muy,
policies.
muy
And this is
clave,
a
muy
very
importante al
key
inicio de cada
moment
administración,
at the
en donde
beginning
hay
of
que
each
generar, hay que
administration where we have
producir
to
todos estos
generate
instrumentos de
and produce
política
all these
pública que van a
tools
funcionar
of
durante
public
los próximos
policies, which are going
5
to be working in
años hasta el
the
2030 y algunos
up
instrumentos
until
van más
2030,
allá del
and
2030.
some tools
Y
go
por supuesto,
beyond
cómo nos vinculamos
2030,
con los
and how
compromisos
we
internacionales en materia de
participate in
biodiversidad, cambio climático.
climate
Entonces,
change.
inicio con esta
So
lámina
I start with
en
this slide
donde es
where
información
this
muy
information
reciente, muy
is
nueva, muy
very recent
actualizada.
information, very updated
Estamos
information.
trabajando con el
We are
programa
working
de
the
investigación de
program
cambio climático
of climate change
de la UNAM, de
adaptation
la
from
Universidad
the
Nacional
UNAM, the
Autónoma de
Autonomous
México,
University of Mexico,
en donde ellos
and
han estado
where they have been
trabajando
working
muy durante ya muchas
for
décadas y
more than a few
estos
decades. And
resultados
these results
apenas los están dando a
are
conocer
just
y
uh,
nosotros los
mm,
estamos
are just
retomando
being
como
made
datos
known,
importantes.
and we are
Uno de ellos
taking them
tiene que
as
ver con
important
el
data.
hecho de que
One of them
todos
has to
sabemos que
do
está
with the
incrementando el
fact
promedio de
that
la
all of us
temperatura,
know that the
pero
temperatures are
resulta que
increasing, but
en la zona específica de
in the
México
specific area of
está
Mexico,
aumentando con mayor
it is
velocidad,
increasing
con
faster.
mayor,
With
es más rápido este
it's
calentamiento, lo
this
cual acorta
warming
los
is
tiempos para
faster, and
poder
it shortens the
generar
times
las
in order to
medidas de
be able to
adaptación
generate the
y
adaptation
responder
measures
ante
and to
pérdidas y
respond
daños
to the
en los
losses and
próximos años.
damages in the next few years.
Entonces estamos hablando de un
So we're
incremento
talking
de un
about an
promedio de
increase, an
1.69
average of
grados centígrados
1.69
con
degrees
respecto al
centigrade
inicio
with
del
regards
siglo
to the
entre
beginning of
1900 y
of the
1930.
century
La
between
tabla de la
1900
derecha nos
1930.
muestra con mayor detalle cómo es
So
esta
we see
tendencia
on the
que
right
va
the
aumentando
trend,
en
how
periodos más
the
cortos, en un periodo más corto,
in a
y eso
shorter
pues
period of
obviamente
time.
nos ponen en
And
una
this
situación
obviously
más
puts us in a
compleja, ¿no?
more
Para poder
complex
encontrar las
situation
medidas de
in order to
adaptación para
find
todos los
the
temas
adaptation
que están
measures
siendo afectados.
for all the
Por otro
areas
lado,
that are
también
being
nos
affected.
indican estos estudios
It
que
also, our studies also
eh,
indicate
la
that
distribución de la lluvia, de la
the
precipitación,
distribution
se ha vuelto más
of
extrema, ¿no?
precipitation is
Hay
more
más
extreme.
lluvia, pero
There
más
is more
extrema
rain,
y
but more
con
extreme,
periodos de sequía más
with
largos. Entonces, los
very
periodos
long
de sequía
drought
se
periods.
extienden y cuando
So
termina
the
la
drought
sequía,
periods are
hay eventos de
extended, and
precipitación
when at
más
the end
extremos
of
que,
the
como se
drought,
ven, pues
there's
genera
precipitation which is
una
extreme,
cantidad
and we have
hídrica mucho más grande que muchas
a
veces no es
hydric
capaz el
amount of
sistema
water which is
los
greater,
sistemas de
and
bombeo,
the
los sistemas
pumping
de
systems and the
control
hydrology
de
systems and
inundaciones
the
son
systems for
desbordados
flooding
porque no
control
estaban
are
calculados para ese
overcome
nivel de
because they are not estimated for this
intensidad
level
en un
of
periodo tan
intensity
corto.
in a very short period of
Y
time.
pues creo que ya todos
And I
sabemos y
think that
en
all of
varios
us
lados
already
del mundo
know
sucede lo
that in
mismo,
several parts of
en
the
donde
world
los
that same thing
escenarios de
happens,
cambio
where these
climático
scenarios
estamos
of climate
encontrando que son
change,
más
we are finding that they are
extremos, ¿no?
more
Más
extreme
en periodos más cortos,
in
pero también
shorter
con
periods of
eventos más
time,
extremos.
but with
La que sigue, por
extreme
favor.
events. Next, please.
Aquí quisimos compartir con
Here, we
ustedes
wanted to share with you
un proceso que
a
se elaboró a
process
partir
that was
de la
elaborated
Comisión Económica
with
para
the
América Latina, la
economic,
CEPAL,
the
que
CEPAL.
es un referente muy
It's a
importante
collaboration
toda
with
la
the
región de
Economic
América
Commission for
Latina
Latin
y
America.
que, como
And
saben, estuvo la
as you
CEPAL por
know,
la
the
actual
CEPAL
secretaria eh, Alicia
was
Bárcena, y en ese
created by
equipo estuvo
Alicia
también
Bárcena,
José
and
Luis
in this
Samaniego
team,
y ambos
we
están
also had
ahora
Mr.
en la
Samaniego,
Semarnat.
and
Y
both of them are
entonces,
in Semarnat now.
estos estudios se generaron
So these
a
studies were
partir
generated
de
beginning
varios años de
in
colaboraciones con
several years of
universidades, con
collaboration with
instituciones, y en
universities, with
este caso muy
institutions.
particular
And in
tenemos
this
datos
specific case,
sobre
we have data
la
regarding
exposición de
the
las poblaciones
exposure of
y la infraestructura
populations and
hospitalaria,
the
cómo está
hospital
expuesta a los aumentos del
hospital
nivel del mar en las zonas
infrastructure and how they
costeras
are
más bajas
exposed
de
to
América
the
Latina
lower
y el Caribe.
parts of
Entonces se
the
analizaron
beaches in North America and the
1.448
Caribbean.
hospitales que
So
están
4,000,
ubicados
I'm
en
sorry,
zonas costeras
1,488 hospitals
y
were
cómo
analyzed in the coastal areas,
la exposición de
and
aproximadamente
how the
41 millones de
exposure
personas es
affects
ya un
41
hecho
million people.
pues bastante
And
comprobado,
this is
en
a
donde
proven
tenemos diferentes
measure. And
escenarios
we
de
have different
elevación del
scenarios
nivel del mar entre
and the
0
integration
y
of the
5 y
sea,
10 metros.
the
Y
coastal
los
sea, yeah,
hallazgos nos
and
indican
it
que
has
pues, el cambio
increased 10
climático
meters.
sí está
And climate
afectando y va a
change is
afectar
affecting and will affect
bastante
mm,
gravemente
in a very severely manner
infraestructura hospitalaria en
the
específico,
hospital
pero también a la población en general. Entonces, para
hospitals
México, en la
infrastructure.
tabla de la
So for
derecha,
Mexico,
de
on
una
the right
población
table
total
of a total
de
population
128 millones de
of
habitantes, tenemos que
128 million in
1.7 más o
population,
menos están en zonas
uh,
costeras y,
4.7,
con
5.7
una,
are in the
con una
coastal
elevación de hasta
zones,
5 metros,
and they have
o
an
esa la
elevation of
cobertura
5
sería
meters.
afectada con una
But
elevación
this
de
is a
hasta 5 metros
population that
y va
would
a ir
have
aumentando el nivel, el número de
be
personas
affected,
afectadas
and
conforme
the level
aumenta
increases. 9 people will be
los
affected, or
escenarios de
more,
elevación
and
del nivel
by
medio del mar.
it would be increased by 9 people.
Y hacemos lo mismo
And
para
we
el tema
do the same
en términos
for
de
the topic
porcentaje, ¿no?
in the
Entonces,
terms
en
of
términos de
percentages.
porcentaje,
So
vez no suena
in terms of
tan grave cuando se
percentages, it
compara con
doesn't
todo el
seem so
territorio nacional,
severe
pero
when
aún
you
así, pues
compare it to the
es
whole
un
country,
número de personas
but it is a
muy,
number
muy
of
afectado.
people which is
Y
very
lo mismo
affected.
para hospitales,
And the
tenemos
same for
43
hospitals. We
hospitales
have
localizados
43
y
hospitals localized or identified.
creo que ahí el número tiene que
And
ser
I
más
think
grande,
that the number
pero
has
el
to
hecho es
be
el
larger
mismo, ¿no?
here.
Que
But the
son
fact is the same,
infraestructura
that
estratégica
we
que
we
está
don't
en
have a
riesgo y que
strategic
estamos
infrastructure.
revisando
The
qué
infrastructure is at
políticas, qué
risk, and we have
instrumentos,
to
qué
analyze what policies, what
vamos a tomar
tools,
para
what actions are we going to take
prevenir, ¿no?
in order
Prevenir
to
sobre todo y no
prevent,
esperar a que
prevent and not
sucedan
wait
estos escenarios. La
until
que
we
sigue,
have
por
these
favor.
scenarios. Next, please.
También tenemos información
We also
del
have
INEC desde
information.
hace,
The INEC
yo creo
has
que más de 10
information
años, ha
for more
estado
than 10 years. We
reportando
have
los
been
riesgos de
reporting
elevación
the
del nivel
risk
medio del mar
of the elevation of the
para
sea
las
level
costas en
for
general
the
de
coastal
México.
areas in
Y
Mexico
ahí, si vemos
specifically.
los mapas,
And
creo que esto
here,
nos
if we
pueden
see
dar
the maps,
indicaciones más visuales
gives us more
para
visual
esta
indications
presentación, en donde
for this
tenemos el
presentation,
Golfo de
where we have
México
the
y la
Gulf of
península de
Mexico
Yucatán
and the
con las zonas
Peninsula
en
de
rojo,
Yucatan,
que
with the
estarían
areas in
afectadas por
red,
un
which are
aumento de un
affected
metro por
by
encima de la
1 meter
la
above
marea
the
alta. Entonces
line of
tenemos que
the
lugares
high
muy planos,
tide.
¿no? Con
So we
pocas
have
elevaciones
very
como el
flat
estado de
areas,
Tabasco
like in the state
y
of
la
Tabasco
costa de
and the
Yucatán,
coast of
que
Yucatan,
están bajo este
which are
escenario pues
under this
muy
scenario,
difícil, muy
which is very
complejo.
difficult,
Y en la
very
zona del
complex.
Golfo de
And in the
California, en el
area of the
Pacífico, pues también
California
tenemos estados
Gulf
como
in the
Nayarit y
Pacific, we
Sinaloa,
have
que
states like
presentan estas
Sinaloa,
zonas
Nayarit,
en
where
rojo
they
que
have the
estarían
areas
siendo
in red,
afectadas.
and these are
Entonces,
the areas
estos
that are
reportes
affected.
los hemos estado
So
incluyendo en
we have
nuestros
been including these reports
comunicaciones
in our
nacionales,
national
documentos,
communications.
pero
And
siendo honesta, creo que
being
está
honest,
faltando incorporar
I
todavía más en
think
las políticas
that
públicas y en las
more are
decisiones. O sea, la
incorporated
información ya
in
la estamos
public
teniendo,
policies. We
pero
have the information,
necesitamos
but we
acciones más
need
concretas y
concrete
ya hacia eso
actions.
voy al
And
final de
that
la
is
presentación. La que
what
sigue,
I'm
por
going
favor.
to say at the end of the presentation.
Entonces, bueno, nos pidieron que enfocáramos esta
They
plática
asked us
en
to
el
focus
enfoque
this
de
presentation
soluciones
on
basadas en la naturaleza y
nat-
creo que
nature-based
ustedes como
solutions.
expertas y
And you,
expertos
as
saben
experts,
perfectamente la
you
importancia de las
very well
soluciones
know
basadas
the
en la naturaleza
importance
y por qué tenemos que
about the
reforzarlas. Y
the
quiero decir que es
that
un tema que
nature-based
además
solutions.
la
This is
titular
a
de
topic
Semarnat
that
lo tiene como uno de sus
Semarnat
ejes
has,
principales,
the head of
lo tiene muy
Semarnat
presente y nos está
has
pidiendo
this
pues ahora
very,
sí
which is
que
very present on her
propongamos,
mind.
¿no?
And
Soluciones
we
muy
are,
concretas que tengan que
she
ver
wants
con
us to propose
soluciones
very
basadas en
concrete
la
solutions
naturaleza y más
in
cuando
on
somos un
solutions
país con 11,000
of
kilómetros de
on
litoral,
solutions
que
of
pocos
nature-based
países tienen
solutions.
esa
And
costa tan amplia y pues
not too many
necesitamos
countries have this very
trabajar con
wide
base en
coastal
cómo
area.
funcionan los
And
ecosistemas, con
she asked
base
us to
en
work based on the
en la
ecosystems
ciencia,
and
en las
based on
ciencias naturales
science
para
and
poder
natural
plantear
science in
soluciones
order to
que
present solutions
se basen, ¿no? Que
that
estén
are
basadas
based
en cómo funcionan los ecosistemas. La que
that
sigue,
are
por favor.
based on how the ecosystems work.
Y aquí voy a hacer una
And here
pausa
I'm going to
de qué
stop.
estamos haciendo
What are we doing
en esta nueva
in this
administración para
new
reforzar
administration
en
to
general los
report
temas de
in
adaptación al
general
cambio climático?
the topic of
Digamos
adaptation to
que
climate change?
en nuestra
Let's
RC y en los
say
instrumentos que hemos
that in
manejado
the
hasta la
tools that
fecha
we have been
en la
working with up
contribución
to date,
determinada a
the
nivel nacional,
contribution at a
hemos
national level,
planteado algunos
we
ejes,
have
5 ejes o
five
componentes que
components
indican
that
muy claramente
indicate
que la
very clearly
adaptación al cambio
that
climático es
the adaptation
multisectorial
to climate change
y es
is
multidimensional.
real and
Y
it's
eso requiere un
multidimensional.
enfoque muy
And that
sistémico,
needs
¿no?
a
Y
very
eso creo que
systemic
nos ha
approach.
puesto
And
en
this
la vanguardia,
approach is
diría
in
yo,
the state of the
de
art
países que plantean a la
of
adaptación de una manera
countries
tan
that
completa.
look at
Y esto lo
adaptation in a very
empezamos a hacer
complete
desde el
manner. And this is
2012,
what
yo
we
creo,
started
las
doing since
primeras
2012,
bueno,
since the first
propuestas de país a
proposal
al
from the
secretariado de la
countries
Convención de Cambio
for the
Climático. Entonces, hemos
Secretariat
mantenido
of
esos
the
ejes, pero vamos a ir agregando
Climate
nuevos
Change
conforme
Secretariat.
sale nueva
So as
información y
we have new information and as we have
nuevo
new
contexto también.
context
Entonces, estos
also,
6
so these
elementos
six
que ven aquí en
elements that you
pantalla
see
son los
here on the
temas que
screen
vamos a estar
are the
trabajando
topics, on which
muy
we will be working
de una manera muy
in a
dedicada.
very
Tenemos equipos de
dedicated manner.
trabajo
We
que
have
estamos
work
buscando
teams that
financiamiento
we're
para
looking for
poder
financing
complementar
in order to
y
be
tener
able
una
to
política de adaptación
complement
mucho más
or have an
robusta.
adaptation
Entonces, en
policy
primer
which is
lugar,
more
como
robust.
muchos de ustedes
As
saben,
many of you
es
already
necesario
know,
ya
it is
tener un
necessary
sistema de
to
métricas
have
y de
a
indicadores más
metric system and indicators that
sistémico,
are
más
more
integrado,
systemic, more
más transparente
integrated, more
para que mida
transparent
cuáles son
in order to measure
los
what are the
indicadores en
indicators
términos de
in
adaptación que
terms of
nos indiquen si
adaptation
nos
that
estamos o no
indicate
logrando adaptar al cambio
whether we
climático
are
y cómo
adapting to
estamos
climate change
fortaleciendo
and how
esas
we are strengthening
medidas de adaptación.
those
Entonces, este
adaptation
es
measures.
un paquete
So
muy,
this
muy
is
grande para
a
nosotros
very big
y estamos
package for us, and
buscando,
we're
pues,
looking
igual que todos
for
expertos que nos
all
ayuden.
the
Estamos en el grupo de
experts
trabajo
could
del
help us.
Global
We are
Adaptation
in the
Goal del secretariado para ver
global
también a nivel de de
global
la
fishing war,
convención,
uh,
pues qué va a
part of
salir
the
de ahí para
convention,
poder adoptarlo
and we
acá
can
en México,
adapt
pero también
to
proponemos
we can
otros
adapt it to
esquemas
Mexico.
que nos funcionan
And these
en
are
paralelo.
topics that are
También estamos
adapted in
haciendo una
parallel.
actualización de los
We are also updating
costos del
the
cambio
costs
climático,
of
pero también
climate
estamos
change,
estimando los
and we are
co-beneficios
estimating the
asociados a la
co-benefits
mitigación.
related
Creo
to
que todos
mitigation.
sabemos que
So as all
el
of us
tema de
know,
adaptación
the
muchas veces
topic of
llama la
adaptation,
atención. Hay
many
muchísimos
times it
recursos
attracts
en
attention. There are
mitigación y
many resources
necesitamos
in
ser más
research, but we need to
proactivos
be more
y más
proactive,
claros en
more
cuanto a qué
clear
co-beneficios hay, aun cuando se está hablando de
with regards to
mitigación.
the
Y aquí creo que
co-benefits,
hay mucho
even though we're
potencial
talking
para
about
llamar más la
mitigation.
atención sobre
So
la
there's a lot of
adaptación.
potential in order
El
to
tercero
attract
tiene que
attention
ver
for mitigation,
con un eje que ya traemos desde hace tiempo,
adaptation,
que
I'm
es
sorry.
ser
And the
más
third one
proactivos y
is
más concretos
to
con
be
soluciones
more
basadas en la
concrete and
naturaleza y en
more
valoración de
act,
servicios
be
ecosistémicos.
more active
En
in
cuarto lugar,
nature-based
estamos
solutions.
agregando un
We
nuevo
are adding
eje
a
en
fourth
la
one,
política de
which is a new
adaptación que tiene que
axle
ver con
in the
seguridad y
adaptation
cambio
measure that has to
climático.
do
Y
with
ahí queremos
security in
también
climate change. And we
lugares,
want to
sitios,
find
regiones donde
places, sites,
requieran
regions
intervenciones rápidas,
where
¿no?
they
O rapid
where they need
interventions,
rapid
donde
interventions,
podamos
where
empezar
we can start
ya
now.
a incluir
We
medidas y
can
no
start
esperar
including
más años a
measures
que haya
and not to
estudios
wait
o
for more
diagnósticos, sino
years
necesitamos ser
to
mucho
have,
más
not to wait
concretos en
more
las
years for
acciones.
hydrological
Y
studies.
para
We
junio
need
o
more
julio de este
actions, and
año
for June or July
estaremos
of this year,
presentando los
we will
hotspots
be
de qué sitios
presenting
vamos a estar
the
trabajando
hotspots
para
of what
implementar
sites we will
y
be
cómo
working on
vincular
in order
esto
to
con
increase, and how to link
seguridad
this with
nacional.
national safety.
El quinto elemento tiene que
The
ver
fifth
con la
element has to
adaptación como
do
una oportunidad
we as
para
the fifth one has to do
desarrollar
with
inversiones,
adaptation as
empleo,
an opportunity for
tecnologías
investment, development,
y que veamos a
technology,
la
and
adaptación como
employment,
una
and to see
necesidad,
adaptation
¿no? Una
as
necesidad y
a
entonces
need,
cómo
and
respondemos
how
ante ella con
we
la escala y
can
los recursos que
present
se
in the
requieren.
scale
Y por
and the
último, pues
resources
estamos también
necessary. And
incorporando
last,
pérdidas y daños
we are
a
including
raíz de las
losses and
conclusiones en la
damages
convención.
with regards to
La
the
siguiente,
convention.
¿cuánto tiempo tengo casi?
How much time
Yes,
do I
hi
have?
Celia. You are a bit over time, so if we
Oh,
could wrap up in
I'll
maximum
go.
1 minute, we would appreciate it.
All right. Muy bien. Esta lámina es
This
simplemente
slide
para mostrarles
is
cuáles
just
son
to
los
show you
ejes de la
what are
política de
the
adaptación.
axles of
Tenemos los ejes
the
de población
adaptation
humana y
policy.
territorio,
We have
sistemas
the
alimentarios y
axles of
productivos, tenemos
productive
conservación,
food systems.
aprovechamiento
We have
de recursos
restoration,
naturales, recursos
recovery,
hídricos,
natural
infraestructura
resources,
y ahora
hydraulic
seguridad nacional.
resources
Esos
structure,
son
and
los
national
6
safety.
ejes que vamos a
These are
estar
the
trabajando.
6
La que sigue.
axles in which we will be working. Next, please.
Y aquí para
And here,
finalizar,
to
creo que sería
conclude,
un buen
I
espacio
think
para
that this
comentarles
is
que
a good
vamos a
moment
estar
to tell
trabajando
you
o ya
that
estamos
we are
trabajando
going to be
en
working, or
estos
we are
instrumentos
working
de
already
política
in
pública,
these
en
tools for
donde el
public
tema de
policy,
soluciones
where
basadas en la
the
naturaleza y
topic
el
of nature-based solutions and this topic of coastal communities. All the topics that have to do with seas and coasts will be the priorities within the strategy, the national strategy of climate change, the national hydric plan, the national plan of adaptation, the national policy of adaptation, the national strategy for biodiversity, the national restoration plan, and we're going to be working in coordination with all these elements. These are some projects that we already have, in which we will continue working. You will see this in detail when we share the presentation. And that's it. So thank you very much. And I would like to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Celia. We'll have the question and answer period at the end of the three presentation. So our next speaker I will put the presentation on the screen. 1 second. Perfect. So our next speaker will be Trevor Meckley. He's the scientific program manager at NOAA at the National Centers for Coastal Ocean Science. So please, Trevor, the floor is yours.
All right. You seeing the screen okay?
Yes, we do. Thanks.
All right, great. So as you heard, I work for NOAA in the Ocean Service and support a program called the Effects of Sea Level Rise program. And so today I'll run through just the program very briefly and then mention a couple of stories of how our teams are working with communities to help them consider natural infrastructure within their flood mitigation. And I'll close very briefly on a tool on road performance under flooding that I think might be of interest to this group. So most of our projects that we have funded are really focused on advancing models to really better understand what coastal flooding looks like in the future and how the coastline will change under sea level rise. And really doing this at a scale that's relevant to the size of projects and relevant to decision makers' decisions. And so our project focus is usually on adding a better understanding of coastal processes and then predicting future flood conditions, rerunning different scenarios, and then ideally putting actions in the actual model landscape to see how they're likely to perform to help the community make a good decision. So we have 20 active projects around the country right now that you see at these yellow dots. And the types of actions we're trying to support are things like how can communities make good decisions on where to acquire land? How can you go about nourishing barrier islands with sediment or even creating barrier islands with beneficial use of dredge material? How can you nourish marshes with sediment to make them resilient and provide flood protection and avoid erosion? And how can you do things like reconnect historical waterways that get sediment to eroding coasts while also reducing flooding, as well as a whole range of different kind of hybrid flood designs. So the first kind of project I want to share with you is going to be taking you to LA County in California. And so we have a team there led by Brett Sanders with UC Irvine and also University of Miami. And much of the kind of flood management system was built by the Army Corps of Engineers. And it was done at a time when the only concern was really the safety. And so the channels were built to do one job really well, and that's to take water from the mountains and get it out to the coast and do so very quickly. In more recent decades, it's pretty clear that you lose other values when you just focus on that one issue. And so in this upper picture, you see a picture of an LA flood channel. And in the lower picture there, you see an example of a more naturalized system in Santa Ana River in Orange County. And it really showcases a different picture than in LA. And that takes us to the question of, is it possible to bring these types of naturalized systems to LA and then also take into account those other values like water conservation, access to nature, urban cooling, all those types of things in addition to just the one thing the Corps was worried about at that time frame, which was flooding. And so the team developed a model called Primo, and they did this for the whole LA River and San Gabriel River watersheds. And so Primo is a specialized flood model for urban space. It's a 2D shallow water equation with a dual grid method. And the key with this approach is that it allows for really pretty quick model runs and really fine scale resolution. And that allows us to do things like include all of the levees, the gates, the canal gates, the street drains, all of the features that actually impact flooding in an urban space, but you really need fine scale detail to include them. So I'm going to show you that the flood results from 4 different scenarios of different actions that could be taken to the watershed that the LA County was interested in seeing. And so the top one is just running the existing flood channel, doing it with a 1 meter levee increase in elevation, naturalizing the channel, or naturalizing it and widening it 3 times. And so in this slide, there are 4 maps you see here to the right. I'm going to take time going through this, so don't feel too overwhelmed. And in this case, the darker color is the 100-year flood in these 4 maps, and the lighter color is a 500-year flood, or a 0.2% annual chance exceedance. And so if you're comparing across these different flood results, if you look at the blue, which is the existing case, versus the raised levee on the opposite end in red, you're going to see that there's actually a slight increase when you raise the levee for a 100-year storm event. It goes from impacting 57,000 people to actually 62,000 people. And that's not an accident. When you raise up levees and make them higher, it actually makes it harder for water to gravity feed down into that system. And it makes it harder to get the water in. So often when you see levees, you see pumps show up as well to get that water in. However, when you get to a 500-year event, the existing is much worse. You see a pretty good reduction in impacts of 403,000 down to 334,000 impacted. So the levee becomes quite important with a big event. Now, if we compare events between the blue, the current conditions, and the naturalized system right next to it there's actually a pretty substantial increase, especially at the 100-year flood event, but it's also the 500. With this just standard channel and naturalizing it, it doesn't work well. However, if you look at the 500-year event with the natural and widened in the green image here, you see that there's actually only about a 6% increase in flooding. And so once you do that tripling of the channel width, it actually does a pretty good job of handling a big storm event as compared to the current system now. So I do want to note one other piece here, which is, not every condition's the same, right? So you're going to have winners and losers depending on how you treat this system. And it's going to be important to consider that about who is impacted and where they're impacted and how they can be helped. So just a couple things to highlight before I move on from this example. One is that you need space to consider natural infrastructure. In almost every example anywhere, I'm sure many of you know that well, there seems to be a general pattern that about widening a channel 3 times in a river system gives you the potential to start thinking about naturalizing it. You see that start to bear out a little bit in this work. Second, water managing agencies aren't going to take just one action, right? They could do some areas where they widen it and naturalize it. Other places, maybe a levee is necessary because you don't have the space. So they're going to take a number of actions, and you can look at that in this type of modeling approach to think about how you manage the whole system holistically, which we see to be difficult without the type of science we support. And then the third piece is this team is also supporting the sediment side of things, where they're trying to understand how they get sediment out to the coast where it's currently eroding, because currently the system's a lot of trapping it, and a naturalized system is going to provide some opportunity to do that. All right, so the second story I want to tell you about is for the other side of the country in Charleston, Rhode Island. We're going from a river system to a coastal system. And so this team has been working with the town of Charleston, the general public, the state, and Fish and Wildlife Service. All these groups own different parts of this region. It's really a patchwork of land ownership, not unusual, but a major challenge whenever you're getting into large-scale projects that are actually going to influence flooding for a region and include natural infrastructure. So for this here is an image. I'm going to show you a video of one of the big issues they have here, and this is the Charlestown Breachway. You can see there's a cut through there on the wrong side of the breachway that's actually letting sediment into the channel. This is a really important spot that it's connecting the ocean on the left and to the Ninnegrit Salt Pond on the right. The salt pond has a lot of recreational activity. People like to bring their boats out through this channel, and it has aquaculture, so they really need this to be an open connection for all of those things. And currently in this image, you see actually a drone over top of the state-owned parking lot. It's a really important revenue source for folks to be able to park here and get to activities. Currently see it quite sandy. And one of the big issues with that, the channel, is that every 3 years they've been dredging it, even more than that recently, and it's about $2 million each time. So they really need a long-term solution because it's a very expensive kind of short-term Band-Aid. And now we're turning and headed up the coast, and you see this is the one access road to actually get to the site, and it's currently flooded and pretty impassable. So they really need a better access system to get there reliably, or else whatever you have down there is pretty inaccessible. So the research team led by Isaac Guinness at the University of Rhode Island ran their ADCIRC and SWAN and XBeach models to really look at how this system changes under two different scenarios. One, the state just wanted to, and the region wanted to understand what just kind of fixing that jetty hole is. You see there's an opening right about at the 20-minute line, the 20-hour line, and then it's going to open again under these storm scenarios. And so on the left is just doing the reconstruction of the jetty, and on the right is the jetty plus doing a large sand nourishment, which is a consideration for this group. In both cases, under a really large hurricane, this is Hurricane Sandy, which is a major storm for the east coast of North America, especially the U.S. and Canada, and you see in both cases that they do fail. The one on the right with more nourishment does a little bit better. And the real key with working with the town on this is they understand that either of these cases are not a long-term solution. Both times you get an open forming that's going to probably require some recovery. And the 30-meter nourishment helps a little bit, but still doesn't really fix things long-term. The town did just go ahead and fix this again this prior winter. And so in April, you see that it's really patched again and looking healthy. But it's not likely to survive another event. So they're currently working with the team to look at more robust designs that consider kind of a larger dune and beach system, as well as more substantial engineering to make this work for a while longer. The other piece I mentioned was this road. So this is the road that came down that you saw that was completely filled with sand and water that they regularly actually use their snow plows on to clear. And so this road, is actually in kind of the middle of where the dune would naturally migrate. You see the dune here on the right, and the roadway is right in the center of it. It's blocking that pathway. It's expensive to maintain. It fills with water all the time. It's really a problem for that region. Moving it back, though, is a tough conversation. The team has shown them a lot of models. The only real economic solution is to move this road back, but you get into two challenges here that you're going to have often. One is habitat trading. So this is kind of a fronting dune system. What they're talking about is taking the road out, allowing the space to actually naturally move and the process to take over, and moving it back onto a sand flat. That sand flat, though, is home to a number of protected species and other things. So you're going to have to talk about, how do we make a decision about what's more important in this space? Also, the road offers some kind of institutional protection to the homes, so the homeowners are also not wanting to see it go at this time. So it's kind of a complex discussion, but one that is progressing towards moving that back. All right. And the last thing I wanted to mention is a tool. So we were asked to share relevant tools. We don't actually support a lot of tools with our programs. There's some at NOAA that are great for looking at coastal flooding and sea level rise that you can look up for especially the United States and some territories. But we find that those do a good job of kind of communicating general risk, but don't often get you to the next step of informing action. And so that's where the niche for our program is. And this tool happens to be one of the exceptions that we think is pretty broadly useful. And so in this one, the teams run thousands of numerical model runs that underlines this tool. If you go to the link at the bottom, you can go and play around with this. In this case, a 4 is a really healthy road on the y-axis. A 1 is a failing road, and you can see time is on the x. And so in this case, you can go in and change your layer thickness, your material properties of your road, how long you want it to last, the groundwater level, sea level rise, inundation and traffic patterns, and you can see how long the road lasts based on that. And this was developed for New Hampshire and Alabama, so a pretty broad range of kind of freeze and thaw cycles and things like that. And then from this, you can get an idea of how a road works. In those two regions, they can actually work with folks to put specific projects into the modeling landscape and see how well they work, whether or not that natural design is likely to be effective in the performance of it. And you're welcome to check that out and reach out with any questions. And that's all I have.
Great. Thank you, Trevor, for a great presentation. We're really getting to know a lot of examples, tools, or also getting a sense of the issue or the magnitude of how coastal flooding might impact communities for the case of Mexico. And so our third, last but not least speaker is Jordan Vino. She's a climate change program manager at Coastal Action. So please, Jordan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Catherine. I'm just pulling up my screen here.
Great. And you'll see my camera pop on when you have like 30 seconds, a minute left.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jordan Vino. I'm the program manager for the climate change team at Coastal Action, and I'm going to talk to you today about our flood protection and shoreline stabilization project, which is better known as our Mahone Bay Living Shoreline. Before we get started, I do want to do a land acknowledgement. Coastal Action lives and works on Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. This territory is covered by the Treaties of Peace and Friendship, which Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqey people first signed with the British Crown in 1725. I'm starting this presentation today with a land acknowledgement to show our respect and gratitude to the Mi'kmaq, who have managed this land for thousands of years and shared priceless knowledge that settlers have needed to survive. I hope that this acknowledgement will be a reminder that we are all treaty people and that it will help to keep in mind that what we owe to each other and to the land. A little bit about who we are as an organization. We're a charitable organization based on the South Shore of Nova Scotia, Canada, that believes in safeguarding a healthy environment for future generations. For over 30 years, our goal has been to promote the restoration and conservation of our environment through research, education, community engagement, and action. And we work in 5 core areas, one of them being the climate change program. So getting started on the project, this project could not have come together without the support and expertise of our project partners. As a collaboration between industry, academia, government, and a community-based environmental organization, this project helps to build regional capacity and expertise in the application of nature-based coastal adaptation infrastructure. Coastal Action leads the project and the partnership, and we also facilitate the community engagement components involved with the work. CPCL Limited is a leading multidisciplinary engineering and environmental consulting firm based out of Atlantic, Canada. Transcoastal Adaptations Center for Nature-Based Solutions at St. Mary's University is a team of academics and industry partners leading the research and monitoring of this project. CB Wetlands and Environmental Specialists is a Nova Scotia-based habitat restoration and environmental research firm specializing in wetland systems. And of course, the town of Mahone Bay is a waterfront town here in Nova Scotia that is very vulnerable to the effects of climate change and is also the site host for the project. To acknowledge our funders, the first phase of this project, which we'll talk about in a moment, was the installation of the demonstration site and was generously funded by the Intact Financial Corporation, along with TD and the Arbor Day Foundation, as well as the town of Mahone Bay. This next phase of the project is supported by the Sustainable Communities Challenge Fund, delivered by the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities on behalf of the province of Nova Scotia, and as well as the TD Ready commitment. So getting into a little bit of a project overview, just to provide some context before we get into the details, the Living Shoreline is a nature-based solution aimed to adapt to the impacts of climate change on a coastal community. The project site is located in the town of Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia, Canada, situated along our iconic three churches, which you'll see pictured here on the left. Like most coastal communities, the town of Mahone Bay is vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, especially erosion, flooding, and an increase in contaminated stormwater runoff. After many years of planning, the 60-meter pilot demonstration site, which you'll see in the photo on the right, was installed in the summer of 2022, and the expansion, which will be another 100 meters of living shoreline, is planned to begin construction this year. This project involves four key elements: planning, construction, community engagement, and research, and we consider each of these elements to be equally important in its success. A little bit more about the components and the design of our project. It's divided into what we call three components, which are our rock sills, tidal wetland, and vegetated bank. I won't go into detail on what each of these are, but you can find more information about how each of these pieces functions collaboratively to achieve our goals on our website. I do want to spend a little bit of time talking about community engagement. This has been a crucial piece, I believe, in the success of our project. Over the lifespan of this project, we've been meaningfully engaging with the community in many different ways. One of the first ones I'll highlight is, you can see a photo on the bottom right of our screen here. We created and developed an interactive flood map with 3D wave design that helps to visualize flood risk as well as conceptual designs of the living shoreline as a tool to communicate our project and goals to and in partnership with the community. We've also hosted public planting days that were held to allow community members to help install the plant material while learning about nature-based solutions and climate change impacts. And over the course of the project, we've been offering many different types of educational opportunities, such as presentations both virtually and in person, showcases of the site, and hosting workshops. And the support we have received from the community and the region at large has been overwhelmingly positive and has been a real highlight for our project partnership. Getting a little bit more into the research and monitoring of the project, the coasts of Atlantic Canada are especially vulnerable to three major climate change factors, being storm surge, sea level rise, and an increased precipitation. These result in impacts of coastal erosion, flooding, and an increase in contaminated stormwater runoff. And those are the three impacts that our living shoreline particularly aims to protect against, and also are the main focus of our research at the site. As we prepare to install another 100 meters of living shoreline, we are expanding our monitoring program to include more investigation on fish habitat, vegetation, and an overall investigation of the ecological function of the site. In addition to the research that we've done and is being done on our project, the site functions as a living laboratory supporting applied research on coastal resilience and nature-based solutions. It also serves as a platform for graduate level study with master's students actively engaged in fieldwork and data collection. And if you're interested to hear more and read about our research, the first monitoring report is available on our website, which is just mahonebaylivingshoreline.com/research. In addition to the research and monitoring program for the project, we've also needed to conduct specialized studies of the site conditions. Habitat assessments were performed in the planning stages of the project to inform many aspects of the project. A geotechnical investigation was also conducted to assess the sediment composition of the harbor and load-bearing capacity of the ocean floor. These findings informed our final recommendations for safe and durable construction and directly shaped our final expansion designs. And also, we're currently in the process of conducting an archaeological resource impact assessment to identify and manage any potential cultural or historical resources at the site. This work is being done in consultation with local Mi'kmaq First Nation communities, ensuring culturally significant areas are respected and regulatory requirements are met. A little bit about the challenges, because of course, with every project comes challenges. For our project, one of the biggest challenges we've had was obtaining the required permits necessary. For the demonstration site, the processing of our provincial permit took much longer than we expected, and this ended up causing major delays to our project schedule. An unexpected challenge in the second phase of the project was being denied permits that we had successfully obtained for the first phase and navigating solutions to those barriers that satisfied all parties. Because these challenges caused ripple effects, there were adjustments that needed to be made to the project schedule and created another major challenge for us, which was that costs inflated across the construction sector in our area throughout 2020 and into 2022, which increased our project costs by nearly 100%. And that made it difficult to find additional funding needed for the harder infrastructure components or hybrid nature-based infrastructure systems, which could be difficult to access and competitive, especially considering our project was the first of its kind in our region. But moving into our key successes, one of the main successes that we like to share is the cross-sector collaboration between academia, industry, and local government, as well as the community-based environmental organization. Like I mentioned earlier, this helps build regional capacity and expertise and application of nature-based coastal adaptation infrastructure. Another key success for us by working through with our partners CB West and Rising Tide Nursery, we were able to successfully acquire locally adapted tidal wetland stock, which was otherwise unavailable in Atlantic Canada. And this was for the tidal wetland installation by growing locally harvested seed and salt marsh sod. Another big one for us is the amount of positive involvement and support we've had from the community, not only during our planting days, but throughout the project so far. And we were able to acquire the additional funding necessary to see the project to its completion. And we're still working to have the expansion completed. So a couple of notes on our next steps. Our research and monitoring continues not only at the demonstration site, but will continue for the 100-meter expansion, which is expected to start construction in 2025 in tandem with another project portfolio with the town of Mahone Bay. We do have a lot more community engagement involved, and we're really looking forward to welcoming the community as well as tourists and members of different academic and industry groups to come out for our planting days that we'll be hosting as the install goes in the fall. And of course, once the installation is fully implemented, we'll be doing any adaptive management that needs to be done throughout the monitoring as is identified. I wanted to say thank you to everyone for attending today, and thank you for inviting me to speak. To stay up to date with the Mahone Bay Living Shoreline, you can visit our website at mahonebaylivingshoreline.com. I've got a QR code there as well. You can also follow on with Coastal Action's other projects on our website, coastalaction.org, our social media at Coastal Action, or you can sign up for our newsletter through our website, The Coastal Chronicle. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jordan, for a great presentation. And thank you for sharing also some of the challenges and lessons learned that you've encountered. We have been a bit over time, but we have time for a few questions. So if I can invite the three speakers, Jordan, Trevor, and Celia, to open your cameras. Um, Maybe Jordan, since you were the last one to finish, what advice would you give to someone, local community and organization looking to implement a similar project?
I would say be comfortable having conversations and have a lot of conversations. I think leading a lot of the community engagement, everyone's coming to these types of projects with different backgrounds and levels of understanding, and not being afraid of who you're going to be talking to or what they're going to ask you, really just opening up the floor to allow people to come to you with questions or concerns can go a long way. And from the practitioner perspective, I always say, talk to your friends. I consider the practitioner community to be just that, a community in itself. So if you know of someone in another organization working on similar projects or trying to go after similar goals, keep connecting and bringing up these types of topics and getting involved in as many different ways as you can.
That's great. Thank you. We had a Spanish question in the chat. I think it was, what challenges have been encountered in establishing adaptation indicators, or even when talking about co-benefit or mitigation? What challenges does this more synergetic approach imply when proposing actions and measuring them? So I guess general questions about indicators, especially in the context of adaptation. So I don't know who of the three speakers would like to try and answer this one.
I mean, I can start. I think it's a huge topic and we can't go in depth, but I think summary is that adaptation is just so complex and so multi-scale, and that we don't have like a single metric, right? We don't have like tons of carbon, or we don't have centigrades or something that helps us to focus on a number, no? So it's very complicated, but I think we have to address it. We can't continue going in the dark to see if we are adapting or not to climate change. So in Mexico, we're thinking of trying indexes, like grouping indicators by topic, by by region, by levels of government. It has to be in different packages, but at least having a sense, even if it's just like a heat map, like, if we have to inform our president or our, big decision makers, we have to be able to say, well, how are we doing in adaptation, and not come up with a list of 200 indicators, which we need. Yes, we need them, but we have to be able to find a communication tool to address whether we are adapting or not to climate change. I think that's the big question, at least the one we see here. I spoke in English, I'm sorry.
Just I can add real quickly that I think you're absolutely right that we're still a little bit primitive in the indices of co-benefits that get beyond just flood impacts to infrastructure. We're really just getting to a point where we have, I think, really good resolution flood information and other types of impact information that we can overlay with those other variables. I think fisheries is starting to get there for some of them, and we can hit some important things, but there's definitely a lot of work in monitoring that needs to happen that can help inform that performance piece and then build some of those indices. And so I'm excited about some of the evaluation of projects that's going to get us there, I think.
Great, thank you. Trevor, since you were up, maybe is there any gaps in terms of science for to inform project in communities, or are there different aspect that prevent science from being used by communities or local project that you would like to
Sure.
flag?
Yeah, well, I'd say we're still at a point in most cases that natural infrastructure is being considered in terms of being how do we, build a flood wall with something more natural, or how do we do what we're trying to do with gray things just for something that's more natural. And the big issue is you need space, I think, to do that. And so there's got to be some giving of space to have an effective nature-based solution, regardless of what, hazard you're talking about. And so I think there's a lot of work that needs to happen to start to talk about that and understand how we get from just thinking about how we build a natural wall to something that actually functions a little more like nature and takes advantage of natural processes. And I think science can help in that space.
No, that's great. Thank you. We are 1 minute out, so I'll leave it at that for the question. That there was a lot of interest and engagement from the public. So thank you for your presentation. I will share my screen one last time. Um, just to show the agenda for the next session that will take place next week. There you go. So as mentioned, this webinar is part of a series of two webinars where we're having great speakers present some of their experience. So next week, the webinar will be on Thursday, May 22, 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So we will have, again, speakers from the three countries sharing some of their experience on coral reef, mangrove, um, and other coastal systems, talking about innovative financing mechanism, uh, community involvement, and so on. So please join us. Also, so the CC is having this annual council session and JPAC Forum in Mexico City, 24th, 25th of July. So please stay tuned. Thank you for having joined us today, and hopefully see you next week. Thank you to all our speakers.